I have started the recording. This is the NAC meeting on March 14th, 2022. And we have Rocky Houston from the Parks Department talking about a proposed plan.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for the opportunity tonight. I've got a few slides to go through here. In general, we're going to cover the pros plan. So that's the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan. It's a 6-year strategic plan that is required per RCWs, those being which ones, of course. Now I got to remember all this stuff. So the first is for growth management. So the Growth Management Act requires us to do a capital facilities plan for 6 years and a 20-year projection. So this helps us meet that objective, as well as it allows us to meet RCO, so that's the Recreation and Conservation Office for the state of Washington, to be eligible for grants, and a PROS plan is a requirement for a few of their programs. But more importantly, what it allows us to do is engage with the residents of the county, identify what recreational assets there is in the county, what the needs are, and develop a plan and how to try to address those over the next 6 years. So sort of as a work plan for us for the next 6 years. So our planning process began before this thing called COVID occurred, and has been delayed because of all the constraints that we're all under through this COVID period of time. So it started off with us back in 2019, 2020, collecting data. We reviewed other plans, we conducted surveys, and hired a consultant to kind of help facilitate sort of our public process and forming the first draft of the plan. We then did our kickoff, which is where we actually go out to the public and engage through public meetings and other elements. Because of COVID, that public meeting process was refined given the time. So we did a lot of one-on-one as well as small group and virtual interfaces much like this to provide us with information. That also, we conducted a second survey to help with that. Through that process, we developed some themes where then we brought those back out to identify. And we'll go over some of the findings later, but really we identified what those recreational needs are, how they compare to state and national data, and really saw how the community is changing. It's getting bigger. We get more and more people here. So definitely the population is growing, and who's moving is changing. So we had a 38% increase in diversity. And so those communities as well that are typically underrepresented. And then we developed a draft plan and have gone through several processes to review that through the Planning Commission, Parks Advisory Board, and others, to then go on to council, where we will eventually have it adopted. So our planning process always goes through a refinement process. So we balance what those needs are, what the input is from the community, and our operational capacity. So really, what can we get accomplished? So we don't have a very large wish list out there of things that we'd like to get done, but we really don't have any way of doing. It's sort of that realism lens, which gives us our cool little plan that we have tonight. Again, to review some of those outreach strategies, we went through our website, social media, email campaigns, posters in our parks, flyers, one-on-one interviews, online meetings like this, et cetera, to kind of move through that. Through that process, we identified a significant increase in our online survey. So that was a good note to see that we had more people responding than we did in 2015, and a lot of good information. So to kind of go over those key findings of the survey, we did get information from all over the county. This map here shows where the dispersal of percentages, you can see, is they're not all light yellow everywhere. You know, they're darker colors. Camas area was the highest area zip code where we did get a response, I think about 13%, but otherwise we got a pretty good cross section of respondents throughout the county. Residents like yourself viewed and valued almost 98% that parks and recreation are important to the quality of life in Clark County. Me being a parkie, that's music to my ears. You know, that's why I get up every morning. The residents also felt that 89%, that is, that we're doing a good job or an excellent job of maintaining our parks. So again, that's a good sign of how we're utilizing our limited crew to go out there and make sure they're in the best possible opportunity so you can have a good time in our facilities. The other thing we found is that y'all use our parks quite a bit. 91% at least are using at least once a month. And look at this, over half, 56% are out there at least once a week in a park. Doesn't always mean that it's a Clark County park, but that you're out in a park property throughout the county, which again, just shows how valuable and important it is as an asset, especially when we were shut down from doing a lot of the other fun things. You know, we couldn't go to France or Disneyland the last couple of years, but our parks were there to serve part of that need for us. We asked what recreational, I can't talk. What recreational amenities do residents see as important? Natural areas and open spaces was the clear winner in that, but trails and trail connections was really close behind. And as you see, as it goes down, that the nuance between very important to somewhat important sort of moves around, where playgrounds and play parks for children, water views and vistas, sports fields, and then facilities like shelters, tables, barbecue, and then sport courts with basketball, tennis, pickleball, and then off-leash dog areas, more specific user groups, splash pads, boats, boat launches, sand volleyball courts, being the last one identified here. The number sideways is 6.1%. I had to squint to get there, but I can't give you the small numbers up above, but they are in the plan. And when we asked about trail improvements, is there interest in, which this is common throughout the nation actually right now, is unpaved trails and natural areas is the number one identified. Parking, which, you know, we all are driving to get to these parks, and so those trailheads become very important. And then paved shared paths, those regional trails, restrooms, another important amenity for a lot of these outlying areas, and then accessible trails. So really making sure that they're ADA accessible and universally accessible to all users and abilities. And drinking fountains and water bottle fill stations, and then it goes down there from trailside benches, vistas, you know, those viewpoints, mountain biking specific trails, and horseback riding trails. Excuse me. So within our greater Clark Park District, and if you probably already know this, but we have sort of two park systems. So we have our greater Clark Park District, which is our unincorporated Vancouver metro area, so that urban growth boundary around Vancouver, and then we have the rural area. So within our greater Clark Park District, we have levels of service for acreage per resident, or 1,000 residents, for community parks, neighborhood parks, and natural areas. But outside in the rural area within our where our regional parks lie, we don't have this level of service rubric to follow. But typically we're trying to get 6 acres per 1,000 residents. We're currently achieving about 89% of that at 5 1/3 acres. The area that's the lowest is, of course, natural areas and neighborhood. And of those developed, we have 4.25 of the 6 acres combined being in our level of service on total acres is 2.54. It's all the math parts of it. This is all in the plan, so I'll try not to or with the red and the black ink too much. But essentially is that we haven't developed as many properties. We've acquired a lot of property. We haven't developed them fully for all of that. Neighborhood parks is about 50%. I believe currently we have 16 park properties that we've acquired that are ready to be developed in the future. So land banking it for that future increase in population and hopefully to get ahead of those price increases for land out there. So right now we need about 270 acres developed to meet that level of service. But for me, I'm visual, so I like maps. And so for me, it's not so much just what the acreage is, but it's really, is the park density. So where are those parks located in relation to people accurate and where it's close to home opportunity. So this is a map that doesn't show much, and that's a good thing. So this is for our community parks. So our from a walkability perspective, we want a community park about every 3 miles. So this is just another lens of looking at that. And so as you look around this Greater Clark Park District and those PIF or park improvement, what is the right term? Districts, there it is, districts. You can see where in District 6, District 5, we have a couple small areas where we're just outside that 3 mile boundary. And then up to the north in the Mount Vista area, we've got a couple small areas there where our community parks. Now, this is just for our community park classification. Other assets we have or others have aren't showing up here. Now, when we flip the lens and look at our neighborhood parks and our community parks, you're going to see a different image here. And so you can see a lot more color. Red is not a good color for that. That means that there's not a neighborhood park for more than a mile. Our goal here that we're trying to do from walkability is have a neighborhood park within a 1/4 mile of all of the housing opportunities where people are living in the county. Now, this is a little misleading in that, for example, right here is Klein Line and the Salmon Creek Trail. But those are regional parks. Those are not neighborhood or community parks. So even though we do have some assets here, it shows in that area that there is no parks, because again, we're just looking at those neighborhood parks and those community parks. There's another park right about here. I'm probably off, but it feels about right here, which is HB4. So that's a park we manage, but we don't own it. I'm gonna come over here a little bit. All right. Sorry, I saw someone kind of pointing in the right direction there for me. It's all good. So again, you can see some of these areas are where, again, as we're looking to acquire new property and develop new parks, these are those areas that we're trying again to look at strategically. So we're acquiring and developing those parks where that density, where the distance is the worst, so we can get people to be able to walk to these neighborhood parks. So shifting gears, I'm going to look at the development project for the next 6 years. So these are the ones that we currently have in our capital plan. This is an index around sort of the whole southern part of the county here. So you can see, I want to say 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 or 10 properties there. And we'll go through each one of these very quickly. So the first one we have that's out to bid right now is Cozy Camp. So this is a neighborhood park that's off of 29th Avenue and 175th Street, if I get those correct, which is north, it's up in Mount Vista, north of the WSU campus. So it's a parcel we've owned since 2003. It's going to have be very similar to our neighborhood parks, where we'll have a playground area, sort of a little sport court, multi-use court, some irrigated lawn areas, a trail that'll bring you down to 29th, as well as connect back up to 175th. And then we'll have a little bit of this area over here in the southwest corner is wetlands and wet areas. So we'll have a little bit of vegetation placed in here, but that's going to be more of a natural area portion of the property. This project should start June 6th and be done by November. The next is Flyda Community Park. So it's an existing park, but what we are doing is, yeah, we're going to yep, it's going to be what the case. Sorry, I'm looking at chat and it says, for years we've complained about the misspelling of Cozy Camp, and gosh darn it, we've made it real and it's continuing. It was named that way when I got here. That'll be my excuse for everyone, but that is the name it came with.
It's the only excuse you got, Rocky. You don't have another one.
Yeah, yes, you're right. But for Flyda, what we have is sort of two elements. We acquired a parcel in the front a few years ago to provide overflow parking. And so we're going to be developing that. So as you know, there's sport fields that are on here, and it can get really busy. And especially when we have someone in our shelter, the parking lot can get full. So we have an overflow parking lot that we're developing, as well as in conjunction with the neighborhood association out there. We have an inclusive playground. I think it's called the Children's Garden Playground, which is a little heart shape, as you can see here. It's going to have a rubberized surface to where it's inclusive, so all kiddos can get out on it. It's going to have some fun apparatus, and there'll be some garden elements to it. In addition, so this is the little roundabout right here is where this is, so you can put that placement. Now right here, there's going to be a new senior housing installed, and so we are working with them as well to have a gate access so that they can come straight into the park, as well as for emergency access. So those are not part of the project, but just still some other elements that we're doing. This went out to bid and has been awarded. This should start in May or June. I got to double check with that, and should be done in September. So the next property project we have is Hawkinson Community Park Disc Golf and Trails. So let's see, 119th up here. This is, I think, 72nd. You come into the park, and where the current day use area is up to the north, so sort of that north 40, we'll call it, is where the course is going to be set up. And it's going to be an 18-hole disc golf course. There's a pedestrian bridge that brings you over the ditch that's there. There's going to be a 1-mile loop trail and a small little shelter that will be placed out here as well. So that'll all be, this all started, geez, back in 2014. We're trying to put a disc golf course in another park identified with some issues with conservation objectives. And so this site was identified. It was planned to be constructed a couple of years ago, but with COVID and such, it got pushed back until now. This has been awarded already and will start on June 2nd and should be done in September, maybe early October.
Who's the developer?
That is a great question. It is a local firm out of Brush Prairie or Camas. I can't think of the name off the top of my head.
I'll
I'd
look it
have
up.
to. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know they have a passion for disc golf, and we just had our community meeting. It was a week or two ago. It all goes together there, but Tapini, did I say that right? Tapanini, T-A-P-A-N-I Incorporated.
We usually pronounce it Tapani.
See,
Yes,
that's you can
It's
tell
close.
you can tell I grew up in Oregon. I just can't say words with vowels and consonants in it really well. But the next project we have that's underway is the Harmony Sports Complex Parking and Safety Improvement Project. So actually, this was identified as our #1 used park facility in the survey. So this is out off of, was it 13th and 192nd out in the city of Vancouver. But it's public works property. And so we have an agreement out there with the Harmony Sports Alliance, I want to say. It's the Timbers and the Little League out there. And so they've, if you haven't been out there, there's a bunch of grass fields, baseball fields, as well as some turf fields. And this project is looking at the phasing up here of the parking. Right now, it's a pretty fun and exciting gravel parking lot, if big mud holes or what you like. And so what this has done is identified 5 phases of work This project is going to address 2, maybe 3, depending upon the funding. So it's going to bring in a new entrance. It's going to be aligned with 13th Street. That'll be in and out. And then we're going to have the existing entrance, which will be an entrance and exit only on that southbound route. So it provides us 2 access points in and out. The parking lot will be all paved in the future, but this will just pave sort of phase 1 and phase 2. And maybe phase 3. There's another 2 turf soccer fields planned in the future with other funding. And then there'll be a little sports courts, maybe pickleball courts and playground planned up here in the front, and then another phase of parking lot. So this is now at about 65% design, just about ready to go to the city for their final land use review in that permitting process. The objective is this to go out this summer for bids and have contract either in this fall or next spring, and that'll just be dependent upon how soon we can get out there and whether or not we can actually get paving done in the winter. So this project's been going on for since about 2018, I want to say. As you guys may know, there was a plan for 13th. It was going to be an arterial that was going to go through the middle of the park. And so we had to work through that process and identify some works around. And so that process is finally culminated to where we could move forward with the design as is. The next one is Curtin Creek Community Park. So this is off 72nd and 119th. There's a fire department out in the front for Vancouver Fire. And this is going to be this sort of 16 acres behind the fire department. So this is going to be, currently there's a sort of a natural wetland area that will remain in that same status, which is the Gladys. Oh, I can't read my own writing there. It's too small, but I think it's Gladys Wetlands. This is going to be a sport park and community park combination. So you can see we've done the master plan, and it's at the initial phasing parts of things. We're, I think, just under 30% right now. This will be constructed in 24. This is going to have the first dedicated rugby football field in the county, and so that will be natural grass, as well as there'll be a multi-use turf field that'll be for Little League and soccer, more of a practice field. There'll be a couple little sport courts up here, plenty of parking, as well as then there'll be a sort of a central channel that'll bring you to the restrooms, and then to a playground area where we'll have a restroom and a couple shelters, and then a few loop trails to the back of it that'll be more of natural, not irrigated sort of lawn areas in the back. So there's that transition from very active to passive to natural viewscape. So this project, again, should be hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have our design completed and we'll be able to go out to bid, and this should be constructed in 2024. The next park on our list is Pleasant Valley Community Park Development. So this is out, WSU campus is over here. It's on Salmon Creek, and is that 50th, 52nd, 55th? Anyways, Pleasant Hill School. We have a nice parcel here. There's already an existing trail that comes through and around, a new pedestrian bridge. It crosses over and makes a connection to where you can access the trail system into WSU. But it was master planned a few years ago, well, more than a few, but to enhance that to playground and have some additional. So we'll have to go back through and make sure that the planning efforts are still consistent with where the recreational needs are, and then looking right now to try to get this out to construction, hopefully in 2024. The next one is the Salmon Creek Community Neighborhood Park. So this is, as you can see here, I-5, just north of that 134th Fred Meyer's hospital area. And this is a park of two tails. So there's an upland area where there will be a neighborhood park developed, and then it goes down into the ravine of Whipple Creek that will be more of a urban natural area. And so this will have a small little playground, be a little walk-in park here that will be then. We have another parcel to the north of it that's a wet, natural area as well. This does not have a master plan on it now, so we'll have to go through the master planning process. And currently we're looking to have this constructed in 2025. And then the next one, this is in sort of my southwest area, so northwest Vancouver. This is off Northwest 16th Avenue and Northwest 116th. So this is the Cougar Creek Community Park. So there's the Cougar Creek Greenway where we've got quite a few parcels connected, and this would be that upland community park connection. It's not master planned yet, but conceptually there would be a small trail, parking area, our standard playgrounds, and then some connections back into sort of the woods here, a little loop trail, and connecting into the Greenway area. Yes, ma'am.
How big is that section you're talking about in my neighborhood?
This parcel, how big is it?
Yeah, I don't see that up there. Usually it says.
Oh, I'm going to take a guess. So it means I'm going to be wrong. I know it's more than 5 acres, and I want to say it's less than 10 acres.
Okay.
But I'd have to.
Let's go for 8.
Yeah,
How's
it's about 8 acres. Yeah, about 8 acres.
Thanks,
I can.
Fred.
Yeah.
And so is this picture here behind it, is that the trail that comes up from the bottom picture? Where is that taken from? Do you know?
Yes, this picture right here is the road and the access currently, and that's right here. So you see this little
Right,
line?
right.
That's
So
this road here.
I get it. Okay,
And
got it. Thank you.
And so if you went out there today, you'd be able to walk along that little access road back into the wood. So we'll have to go through the master planning on this and then go through the design. Currently, we've got this scheduled for 2027. And I think that's it. So before we get to questions, I just want to say is that we are starting an annual capital planning process for a few reasons. One is things change really quick. The last couple of years have definitely shown that to us. And so we want to make sure that we're being inclusive and reactive to the realities so that we're able to engage with our residents and update to take advantage of opportunities, as well as to, if we can't get to something, to reflect that and say that there's a critical issue here, and so we're going to have to pause this project or that project. So that's going to be an annual process, much like the TIP. So we would be going through that as part of our budgeting process, and by the end of the year, say September or November, we'd have it updated for the following year. So this allows us to be a little bit more engaged. But with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Rocky, where does the funding come to purchase the property? And I noticed that all of the property was purchased at a pretty low price. Is this donated property, or how does that get set up?
Good question. So most of our acquisition funding comes through the PIF funds, so that taxing base that. Sorry, I got to turn. I've been in government for about 22 years in Oregon. And so switching to the right terms in Washington, sometimes I apologize. So I may call it a fee, but you guys call it a levy or an excise tax here. So if I get my words wrong, I apologize. So you get charged when you develop those park improvement fees. And then those are what we utilize primarily to acquire property. Sometimes we'll leverage that with grants. Most of those prices are low because we acquired them quite a few years ago. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Greater Clark Park District began in 2005. And so since 2005, we communicated out to you, the voters, that we would develop 36 parks. And we've developed, I think, 33 or 34. And so that's where those prices come in at that price.
Well, it was a very smart move because you couldn't touch it for that kind of money nowadays, any of them.
Yeah, that is true. So there's a question out here on comments. I know some of the environmental groups have submitted comments on the pros plan. Have any modification been made after those submissions? So this pros plan has been going on since 2000. The draft initial draft was back in December 2021. And so we've taken that information. I came on board in July of 2021. And so we've not made any substantive changes in that plan from that December. We've refined it, but we haven't. So I know there was a lot of questions. In addition, we've gone through our legacy lands natural areas acquisition plan as well. And so I know we received a fair amount of comments there. Like, are we going to try to preserve some farmland?
Yes.
And we actually have an acquisition strategy to try to do, we buy out the development rights for farms to where it remains farmland, but then the farmer can still farm. So it's sort of like a conservation easement over that existing farmland. So there's some of those that we're currently working with. The farm, why can't I think of that nonprofit? It's I'm going to call it the Farm Trust. I know I'm getting their name wrong, but it's
I think it's the Agricultural Trust.
Thank you. And there's been a couple properties identified with some willing farmers who are interested in that program. So we've been doing that, as well as many other acquisitions that we're looking at. So I hope that answers. Next question here, and thank you for writing these in. This definitely helps me. Neighborhood parks, has there been any reconsideration of adding bathroom facilities? At this time, no. I know that there was work on looking at whether we do pocket parks, so smaller than the 3-acre minimum that we have. And there was some concerns in regards to making sure who the audience of those smaller parks were. And so the concern there was if it gets to be too small of a park, it's not servicing that 1/4-mile radius, it's just serving a specific development. And so that's kind of not in the spirit from, when it was reviewed by Parks Advisory Board. But in short, no, we have not looked at that for that addition, but that is something we can continue to look at with no promises of adding them to them. Yes, and neighborhood parks are supposed to be those close to home walk, it's like 1/4-mile radius, where our community parks are those destinations where we have off-street parking, restrooms, and then our regional parks like Louisville or Whipple Creek, where it's more of a destination for trails, the river, those other things.
Yes, I just asked the question because I know I live with the city of Vancouver, and they just completed North Image Park, and they determined to go ahead and put a one bathroom that's there. It's some special new design that's supposed to be virtually vandalism proof. And it's just been a real godsend to be able to have the bathroom there. It's a little over a mile to walk. And with my 9-year-old granddaughter walking there and walking back, if there's not a bathroom, it's not a good thing.
I understand, and I've been that person myself sometimes. No, I'll have to take a look at that park. I know I've looked at some new Romtech was developing some sort of urban parks that you kind of hose out and were metal, and we're supposed to have a lot of those vandalism proof elements. And I'd looked at those models in my previous position. So I need to go to North Image and see what they've put in there.
Rocky, Judy has a question. Judy.
Yes, Judy.
Thank you. Do are you familiar with the Lechner landfill area off 94th?
Yes.
Okay, I've been told for years that a portion of it that would be developed into a park. There are right now no neighborhood parks in my entire very large neighborhood association. We have a community park over at Orchard Highland that's several miles from where I live. And Lechner would be really great if anything was going on there.
Rocky, I can speak to that a little bit.
Thank you.
So my name is Kaley. I'm the interim communications manager for Public Works and also run our volunteer program. And before I came to Public Works, I worked for the solid waste team over in public health. So I know a little bit about Lechner. Lechner is still classified as an active land, not active as in no new materials coming in, but there's still methane that needs to be burned off. They're still in the process of getting all the permits to deem it as something that can be developed. So, and I left that team about 1.5 years ago. So things could have changed since I left, but I do know Public Works project we're working on this year is connecting, I believe that's 99th, yeah, right by 94th. So currently Lechner Landfill kind of bisects 99th. So 99th Street kind of ends on one side of the landfill. And then you have to kind of snake through the neighborhoods and get back to 99th on the other side. So we actually are starting a project to connect that. So that's kind of the first phase of redeveloping that area, is putting a road in. We're putting some roundabouts in because we know once that's kind of a thoroughfare and kind of an alternate to 117th Street, there's gonna be a lot more traffic there. So
Right.
putting in some intersections that are roundabouts, we're putting in some sidewalks, some bigger bike lanes, things like that. As far as the Lechner property itself, I believe that's still, don't quote me on this, but it's still owned, I believe, by the county. But the solid waste team is basically in charge of that property, and whether, you know, how it gets developed, sold off. And like I said, I think we're not quite there yet because they are still off-gassing methane and kind of managing the closure of the landfill. So I don't know when that will be developed and what will be put there. I do know that we in Public Works are preparing for it to eventually be developed.
Thank you. Excellent.
Okay, I would hope that it would not be sold sometime and us end up without a park there. Because like I said, we don't have any in our neighborhood association. Thank you.
Yes, and in that area is an acquisition area that we're looking for. It's been difficult to find even a 1 acre parcel in that area, but we are.
Right, it's been filling up with housing developments.
And some days it's really hard to outcompete those developers. They can move a lot quicker than us and have different sets of rules.
I think they have more money too, Rocky. I was going to say that I thought part and parcel to putting together a development, certain requirements had to be met, and that would be including some sort of open space, nature land, park. So that, isn't that part of a big TIF program?
So the you know, I'm not familiar with all the land use requirements for development. I know that there are PIF dollars that go into a pool. Sometimes they do donate sections, and a PIF credit is something that came out through this process that a lot of developers would like us to do. We just want it's complicated to be short to implement a credit, and so that's something that we're going to look at in the future. We just have to have all of our ducks in a row to be able to move that forward from a policy perspective. But that's why those dollars are there to help us, and why we continue to try to go out there and acquire these parcels before, so we can get ahead of some of that wave, so we have that in the future.
If you look at in Pleasant Highlands, for example, there have been a number of new developments, and there are small areas set aside within the developments, but they're not really parks in any meaningful sense. What they are is sort of slightly large playgrounds.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that while they may be observing the letter of the ordinance, they're certainly not observing the spirit of it.
And the good news there, at least, is that those PIF dollars are still going in to where we can try to develop those neighborhood and community parks. So another question that I was out here by Kirk is, what is the current thinking about Campbonneville? So as you guys all know, Campbonneville is a 3,800 acre parcel that was an Army training grounds for Fort Vancouver and Campbonneville for the Army for nearly 100 years. The county's been going through about a 20-year cleanup process. We're nearing the end of the cleanup right now. We're trying to finalize all that. Once we've got the cleanup wrapped up and we've got our sort of operation plan for that, then that's where we would look at trying to do a master plan. Go back to that redevelopment plan from, I think the last version was 2006, and start our master plan from there as a regional park. But again, we're probably a couple years out from even thinking about that at this moment.
Along those same lines, 179th Street I-5 interchange is due to go through realignments. And I believe construction begins in 2025. That's going to open up 2,200 acres for development. And it'll be all the way from commercial, residential, you name it, it's going to be a whole new area. Is there an opportunity for you folks to get some land designated for parks? Because that's going to represent a lot of people moving into that 2,200 acres.
Yeah, so in the last year or two, maybe more than that now, we acquired what we right now it's called is the North Fairgrounds Parks. We acquired a 5-acre parcel there for a future neighborhood park. We are looking at the headwaters of Whipple Creek, so it's called Three Creeks area. So there's a natural area parcel there that we've looked at as a potential acquisition that's just to the west. And we're looking at other parcels around Whipple Creek. You know, it's going to put a lot more pressure on Whipple Creek as it is now. So again, we're looking at that old master plan and continue to try to look at how we can manage that property to where it doesn't get loved to death as well. So when it was planned and developed in the early 90s through the 2000s, it was way out there. And now it isn't. So again, those are some of those things. We'll continue to look at other parcels out in that area to acquire, again, to meet that future demand. And some of those developments are already being done. I know we're working with the Fairgrounds is working with one developer to make a connection on Fairgrounds property from that development down to our Fairgrounds park, that then and creating acquiring an easement where then you can connect into Whipple Creek. So again, we're connecting a couple different properties there to enhance and disperse the recreational use. So we are actively looking for those opportunities. Yes.
Well, now's the time.
Yes. And as you can see in the messages, Kaley has created a link for the landfill that was referenced earlier. And another link. All right. Did I miss any questions?
I just had one little comment after what Roger said, and it is like the old Hill Street Blues sentiment, which was do it to them before they do it to you. And that's what you have to do at 179th. You've got to be there and clamp down on some space, and because otherwise it'll be gone before you blink your eyes.
Yeah, no, you're right. And developers are savvy like all the rest of us, and they see where all those lines are and where those opportunities are and are out there. And so you know, between our legacy lands program and through our PIF credits, you know, those are two great tools we have, thanks to the voters, to be able to continue to try to acquire these recreational properties for that future recreational need of the county.
Well, keep your foot in the door.
Yes, definitely. We continue to try and wrangle. And, you know, this week I was sending a letter to a couple who live down in Portland, and they've got a great little parcel trying to find out what their plan is with it, and would they want to sell it to us. So hopefully my bureaucratic and boring little letter hits a sympathetic nerve. So, we can continue to meet those future recreational needs. That being said, there's a lot of people coming to Clark County, and there is a need for housing. And I know other parts of the county are working on that as well as trying to improve that density and develop those buildable lands that are out there. So it's always
Just in the way of feedback and a compliment all in one. In my patrols with the sheriff's department, I cover the whole county over the years. It's amazing how many neighborhoods have just little tiny parks. Some of it's just grassland, but it's open land. And if you drive through an area like that, and I know there's a definite relationship, wherever you have a nice little area where people can get out in the open and play with their kids or do something, for some reason, that neighborhood always looks better and always seems to be more attractive than other areas that don't have something like that. So I think something like what you do is a very, very important aspect to the quality of life that gets developed in many, many communities.
Well, I do appreciate that, and that kind of rolls into sort of what I try to tell my staff all the time is we're really not in the park business. We're in the memory business. We
Yep.
just provide that opportunity for people to have great memories.
If you have a chance to drive around like I do, you see that. Otherwise, you don't always notice it, but it's very obvious when you see it. It makes a difference.
Yeah, and the great thing is throughout most of at least the urban portions of Clark County, there's a park about every 3 or 4 minutes. How do I know? Because when I was going around looking at our assets, I go to Google and it'd say 3-minute drive, 4-minute drive. And so it was amazing.
There's a lot of them around. They're not big, they're not fancy, but they sure make a difference.
Yes, sir.
Isla's got her hand raised.
Oh,
It's true, I do, but then you guys said something else and I went off track. And if I think of it, I'll send you a chat. I apologize. I'll get rid of this in a heartbeat.
sorry, I didn't see that hand up.
That's
Okay.
okay. That's my job.
I can stop sharing and then that may make it easier for me to see. Oh, no, at least I can see easier. Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
back. Thank you. Okay, I know that the Vancouver School District has worked in the past with some of the schools and developed playgrounds. That has occurred just next door to me, which is Eisenhower Elementary School has a lovely park down behind it. The neighbors were so pleased when what was going to happen was a new school was going to be built on what was the old playground behind it and then drop down there down to a nice little wetland area. It's a delightful solution. And the school district sometimes ends up with more property than they need in given places because they anticipate growth in a certain place. They ask for that land, they buy that land, they hold on to it, and then people shuffle. And when that happens, sometimes they end up with land they don't need. So that's always a place to look.
That is a good idea. And I know there's a few school properties that are right in the right spot for a park. And so this is a good idea. And I know we've had a partnership with a few of them out there. And there's always that for more. That's a great idea. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Rocky.
Thank you.
That's the presentation. I think we need to save a little bit of the time for Kaley to talk about volunteer opportunities. And so why don't you just talk a little bit about how you came to Clark County and got working in the county government, and then
Is that for Kaley or I, sir?
yeah, for Kaley.
Awesome.
Well, I have a little presentation I can share. Let's make that big. Hang on. My computer's being very slow. Can everybody see my presentation? Yeah, okay. So I wanted to start by talking about, and I'm going to try to go through this really quick and save some room for questions at the end. But I mentioned earlier, I'm the interim communications manager, and our volunteer program is actually part of our communications team in Public Works. So I wanted, you guys are my perfect audience, because our communications team is basically working to improve how we get news and information out to the community. So I'm really excited to share with you all how you can stay up to date on exactly the types of projects and development that you were all asking about. So just a quick overview. Public Works is split into two kind of different sections: Office of the Director and Office of the County Engineer. The Office of the County Engineer is more the engineers, the people designing the roads, project managers designing the parks. And our community engagement and inclusion section is in the Office of the Director. And so what our community engagement and inclusion team consists of is the role I'm serving on an interim basis. So a communications specialist. Some of you may be familiar with the term public information officer. That's the person you see on the news and press conferences when something happens. So, but that's really a small part of our job. We have some support staff on our team. They help do things like send out mailers about projects, upcoming projects in your area, set up open houses, things like that. The volunteer program coordinator, parks, community engagement staff. So we have a program coordinator on our team who is in charge of park use permits, special events, reservations for picnic shelters. He also manages the lifeguard program at Kleinline, and kind of all those different ways that our park system serves the public through kind of those special events, reservations, things like that. And then we have pictured here, Eric Lambert is our clean water education staff member. So the county is required by our federal stormwater permit to do a certain amount of clean water outreach. So if any of you really want to dig into how to get your neighbors to pick up pet waste, Eric is the one to call. He has some good resources, signs, some pamphlets about how to talk to your neighbors about picking up pet waste. So we're all on the same team because our jobs are to connect with the community and educate people about the different things that are happening in their community to keep that quality of life we were talking about earlier. And what we're trying to also teach residents what they can do to get involved to increase that quality of life. So a lot of the things that we do are open houses. Those have all been virtual lately. We send out mailings about upcoming projects or road work in your area. Sometimes we'll put door hangers on if we're going to be, adding chip seal to your neighborhood road. We run our social media pages to keep everyone up to date on what's going on. We work with the news media to get our message out there. We provide translation and interpretation resources for our message. And so we work with staff to make sure when they're doing outreach about a project, we get that information in the languages needed, or for virtual open houses, get an ASL interpreter, things like that. We attend community meetings like this, and we also are the ones making sure when there's an emergency, the community knows about it and knows what to do. So usually for Public Works, what that looks like is an emergency road closure because of a mudslide, or what's another good one? Toxic algae bloom. We work with public health to make sure that the community knows when there's a toxic algae bloom at a park. So if you all want to stay updated on all these different projects and what's going on, there's a couple different ways to do it. And through these different methods, we provide information about road closures, construction. Hey, there's going to be construction in your area. Those algae blooms I mentioned, parks information. So when the annual parking pass goes on sale or when reservations start. We send out information about when the splash pad at Kleinline is going to be turned on. We will also send out information about volunteer opportunities and surveys where we're looking for community input. So, you know, we have, if you're on social media, we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course we post on Nextdoor as well. And you don't have to have a Facebook account or a Twitter account to see what we're posting on there. So that's a really great way to get information. And there are links to our Facebook and our Twitter on our webpage. And our webpage is thisclark.wa.gov/publicworks. We also post breaking news right here on the top of our webpage. You can also scroll down in the menu here, and there's a section called News. So those are some great ways to stay updated. But if you want the news to come to you instead of you having to go look for the news, I highly recommend, if you're not already, going to flashalert.net, and you can click on Manage Your Messenger subscription, and you can sign up to receive an email anytime we send out a media release. And so we send those out about open houses, construction projects, emergency situations, algae blooms, all that stuff I talked about. So those are some really great ways to stay in the know about what's coming up in your area or around the county. And so real quick, in the few minutes we have left, I'm gonna kind of pivot and focus on our volunteer program. So as everyone has mentioned, you're well aware of, community is growing a lot. I've grown 17% between 2010 and 2020. Our staff has not grown by 17%, not even close. So volunteers are really essential because more people are using our parks. So just by the sheer numbers game, we're going to have more litter, we're going to have more wear and tear. And so volunteers are really important to helping us keep our parks a really safe and enjoyable place to be. We really see the volunteer program too as a really great way to get people involved and to form relationships in the community and get people out there with our staff on the ground and start kind of brainstorming ways we can solve some of the problems the public identifies that, you know, or some changes that they would like to see made. Last year we had over 11,500 hours of volunteer service, and that's not, 2021 still wasn't a typical year. We were restricting volunteer activities to 15 people at a time. So we're really proud of that number. And we really want to recognize too that just having volunteers out there, having people out there showing that they're caring for the park, they can serve as kind of eyes and ears and a deterrent for other people who, you know, may not treat our parks so well. And last year, volunteers picked up a lot of litter, the equivalent in weight of 850 bowling balls. Or the equivalent in volume in gallons of picking up 60,000 of the biggest size Starbucks cup. So volunteers can really make a huge impact. This is something I really want to emphasize because I know the community sees that there's a lot of litter everywhere, roads, parks, it's just everywhere. And we really appreciate that people want to do something about it. However, we are seeing a lot of people going out and not doing it safely. And we really need you to reach out to us when you say, hey, there's some litter there, I'm going to go pick it up. Please, 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 please. I can't emphasize this enough. Reach out to us before you go do that. And that's because we want to make sure you're safe. We can provide signs like this volunteer litter crew ahead sign, high visibility vests, disposable gloves. But we also want to make sure there's actually a lot of state and federal laws about what you can and can't do around roadways. And a lot of folks we're finding who go out and pick up litter on their own without working with us are actually running afoul of some of these laws. And some of these laws are pertain to railroads and railroad crossings. And the enforcement office for federal railroads for our region is located in Vancouver. So it's not exactly the smallest likelihood that you could get slapped with a fine if you're out there where you shouldn't be, or not doing it in a way where if you work with us, we can make sure that A, you know what you can and can't do, and B, that we're not steering you in a direction where you could potentially be liable for any fines or anything like that. You also should work with us because we provide staff support, supplies, and we dispose of the waste. I know there's a lot of programs kind of being born lately of just encouraging people just to go out and pick up litter and dispose of it in their household garbage. If you do that and you have, your garbage bin is overflowing that week and Waste Connections charges you for extra, that's on you. But if you work with us, we dispose of everything for you. And so that's really a way to go. And then you just get to know our staff and who to call when you see something. So running out of room, so I'm going to go really, really fast. I mentioned roads. So our volunteer program facilitates volunteer activities for parks, roads, and clean water. So we have an Adopt a Park program, and I sent Marilee these slides so she can post these and send them out. So you can read all these bullet points, but basically you commit to cleaning up a park once per month during the nice season. You can also adopt a trail. So pictured here, Salmon Creek Lions Club adopted the Salmon Creek Regional Trail, the Greenway Trail, and the Cougar Creek Trail. And we put up a nifty little sign with your name or your group's name. We can also do group volunteering. So if you have a club, church group, school, business that wants to do a volunteer litter cleanup, I'm your gal. We partner with some local nonprofits like Washington Trails Association, Evergreen, Mountain Bike Alliance to do some of the more technical volunteer work on our trails. We have volunteer park hosts at 12 parks, so they live at the park, and we provide basic utilities in exchange for they clean the restrooms, open, close the gates, respond to safety, security, and emergency situations, things like that. And then folks can work with us on special projects. So they can submit a project proposal to us, and Rocky and our maintenance and operations manager review the project and make sure that, any permitting requirements or requirements for licenses or certifications are met, and then can approve the project. And so we did this recently at Orchards Community Park, where a group wanted to make some improvements to a remote control vehicle track. And then we have independent assignment volunteers. These are volunteers who just kind of, hey, I live next to this park. I want to go out whenever I feel like it and pull ivy. You can work with me to get set up doing that. And then with roads, we have the Adopt a Road program. We have a lot more rules for the Adopt a Road program because of those state laws I mentioned, and also because it can be a little bit more dangerous, obviously, than volunteering in a park. And you commit to 3 cleanups a year for a minimum of 2 years, and we put a sign up on your roadway with your name. And we do have the ability to do special road cleanups for roads that aren't safe for our program, but we can provide a flagger to do to make it safe to do a one-time cleanup. And then with clean water, you can check out a kit to install these no dumping drains to river medallions on storm drains in your neighborhood. Some neighborhoods have trails around their stormwater facilities, so I work with those HOAs to get them the tools and supplies they need to maintain those facilities. And then we also have some staff who work on restoration projects and have volunteer plantings. So if you want to know about all these things and when they're happening and how you can join in, go to our website. Again, these slides will be shared with you, but it's pretty easy to remember, clark.wa.gov/publicworks/volunteer. And on our website, you'll have more information than you ever needed. So some frequently asked questions, my contact information, a volunteer activities calendar where you can see any events where they're open to the general public. And then you can sign up for our volunteer program newsletter, and I highly encourage you to do that. I send it out once a month and kind of talk about ways to get involved or opportunities where we're looking for a lot of volunteers. Whew, and I only went over by 2 minutes, but I'm happy to stick around for any questions anybody has.
Thank you very much, Kelly. That was well organized and very fast.
I had one question, Kaley. We have a water area by us, and people have recorded bullfrogs, an invasive species. And I've looked, and we just haven't found anyone that can answer to us what should be done. Is there any programs at all, or?
Yes, let me,
I can email you later.
I'm trying to, it's not the Noxious Weed Control Board, it's the Washington State Invasive Species Council. I think is going to be your best bet. I will put a link to them in the chat, because our program is focused on vegetation. And so you're correct. If you reach out to Clark County, noxious weed, those are the guys you can report, the invasive weeds to. They're not going to be able to do much about animal species. The Washington Invasive Species Council, they have a, right there on their homepage is a bright green report, a sighting, or no, wait, I think that's just for the wasps. Somewhere on their website, there's a place where you can report what you saw. And what they do is they work behind the scenes to figure out who can do something about it.
Okay.
And connect you with that agency. So I would start with them.
Okay, I think we tried them, and I think we were referred to someone in Portland, but then they said they don't cross the river, and then with the whole COVID thing. So the bullfrogs are getting a lot more entrenched, but I will try them again.
Okay. And yeah, if you get sent to someone in Portland again, reach out to me because I, I'm a member of a couple different local coalitions. My previous background was in restoration ecology, and I managed a 100-acre natural area for about 4 years. So I can reach out to all these groups and colleagues that I know and see if there's anyone else that would definitely be more appropriate to send you to than someone in Portland, for sure.
That would be great, because I didn't realize there was a problem until everyone started pointing out we don't have the tiny frogs anymore.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And because they've all been eaten by the big bullfrogs. So
oh, that's sad. Also, the Clark Conservation District does a lot of, or they've started to in the last 2 years, do a lot more education and outreach about amphibians. So you might want to reach out to them too, because they might, they do a lot of like surveys. They'll go out to different watersheds and wetland properties in Clark County and do amphibian surveys. So they may be a good resource to reach out to too.
Oh, great. I will look them up.
Yeah. In fact, I will just put a link to their website right in the chat.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
If you all are ready, I'll go ahead and close out the recording part of this section.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yes, thank you.